Hi, this is Kendra Murphy from the Department of Innovation and Digital Learning. This video is targeted at our Infuse and Transform teachers who are in their second and third years of the IDLC cohorts. In this video, we want you to think about your SOPs from last year and think about ways that you can grow your SOPs for the upcoming year. We're going to focus on reflecting on your SOP from last year, ways that you can grow when you're thinking about your SOPs, and ways that you can incorporate student agency or some student control and student input into your SOPs. Let's get started. We're going to start out by thinking about SOPs and what the purpose of SOPs are. So take a second and watch this video with me.
Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again? Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Hello, IT. Yeah, have you tried turning it off and on again?
Hello, IT?
Something's wrong with my computer.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
No. Oh dear, thanks.
Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again?
So we've all had cases in our classroom where we have to say the same thing over and over to our students. Our thinking is, if you have an SOP in your classroom, that can be a great place to talk about your procedures. As most of you know, that P in SOP stands for procedures. And that's the point that a lot of us get hung up on when building an SOP. An SOP needs to make sure that it addresses procedures. So what are the solutions for issues that arise in your classroom? So rather than it being a rules sheet, your SOP should be more of a solution sheet. So how can students address issues and address problems that they're having in the classroom? When they see that something's gone wrong, how can they solve it? We don't want them to have to come to you as the teacher all the time. And as a teacher, you don't want to answer the same questions over and over again like the people in the video. So what are the procedures for common issues and common situations that arise in your classroom? So if you think about it, wouldn't it be helpful if when the screen is cracked on an iPad, or if the kid drops Wi-Fi, or if they've been out of school for a couple of days, they can look at an SOP and just know what to do. They don't need to ask you, they don't need to ask anyone else, because there's already a built-in support for that. And there's lots of instances where SOPs are useful in the general world. If we think about when you're starting a new job, or when students are getting their first job, or working at wherever they end up working at, there'll be SOPs for them as well. So let's take a couple minutes and reflect on your SOPs from last year. So what parts of your SOPs worked well for you? What worked well for your students? And what might you have wanted to adjust, and what didn't work or make sense? So take a couple of minutes and reflect back on this. You can use a Google Doc to do it. You can reflect in your mind. You can use Twitter if you use Twitter. You can write it down on a piece of paper. Just take a couple of seconds and address each of these questions in your reflection, please. Great. I hope that you got a chance to really reflect and think back to your SOPs from last year, and hopefully you can build on those SOPs. The reason that I chose the picture up here is sort of another reflection piece. If you have something in your SOPs, make sure that it's a class SOP, not just a student SOP. If you're asking students to do something, try and model it yourself. Now that you've had a chance to reflect on your SOPs from last year, let's take that a step further and grow the work that you've already done. So in previous years, we focused a lot on the device when you're thinking about your SOPs, rather than thinking about classroom behaviors that we want to see. So think about continuing your SOP having to do with your device, but also think about SOP items that deal with learning, expectations, behavior, things that happen in your classroom. Try and think about what are common issues in your classroom. You can also think about coming up with a procedure for de-escalating situations. So if you know that you have students who struggle with certain situations or get themselves emotionally worked up, maybe those SOPs can have something for addressing issues like that. So if students need to remove themselves from a group, if they need some time to themselves, ways that you can lead your students to be successful and ways for your students to be independent in your classroom. You want to focus your SOPs on solutions rather than on punishments. I'd like you to take a second and visit the website that's on here. It's a shortened URL, so it's goo.gl/little y, big R, little d, little e, capital I, little m. This website will take you to a blog article that is 7 steps to set up your class for blended learning. And it has some really good ideas on setting up procedures and routines. And that's what we're asking you to do here. So I want you to take a couple of seconds, read through what she says about setting up routines. There's some good information in there and some other examples of things she brings up to address on building your SOP. After you read that article, if you can, take a second and try and find another resource. Find something that I didn't offer you, but something you can find that helps push your growth further on what your SOP is going to look like. So not only device-centric, but really the expectations for learning and success in your classroom. Now that you've had a chance to grow your understanding of what SOPs can look like, I'd like you to consider one final aspect. This year, we're going to focus a lot on student agency. And student agency, at its heart, is giving students control in the classroom over what they're learning and how they're demonstrating learning. So we'd like you to maybe think about developing a portion of your SOPs. Maybe it's one part, maybe it's all of it, depending on where you are in your journey and in your development. But how can you give your kids some control over what's going on in your class? Where is there an instance where they can share how the SOPs are working for them? And maybe your SOPs are already started for this year, and that's fine. But maybe at quarter or at semester, students can have some input on the SOPs for the class, and maybe they can come up with some solutions. So if you're having a hard time getting started with any of this, and you want to think of a way that students can use technology in your classroom, maybe think about having students build SOPs or use the SOPs that are already existing and have them record videos to demonstrate them. It's a great way for them to practice with technology in ways that maybe they haven't been using in your classroom. And it's also a great way of them demonstrating what they're doing and what their understanding is of the SOP in your classroom. Additionally, it's a great reminder later on, so when new students add to your classroom, or if your students are not following through on the SOPs that they agreed to, maybe that's a good time to remind them and redirect them toward the videos that they recorded. It can then turn into a really great library for you to use as a resource in your class. So you know how you want your kids to act. Know how you want them to turn in work. You can make a library, they can teach technology, and at some point, hopefully, they can have some input on what's happening in your classroom. So think about, where are you having conflict with your students? Are there issues that are going on in your class? And how can they have a say in resolving it? Maybe the way that you have mapped out for something to happen is a good way, but maybe your kids can think of a better way. So take a second and reflect on these two questions. So how can you give kids control, and how can their input drive the content? Thanks for looking at your SOPs and hopefully growing what you can do with SOPs and maybe taking on a couple of other things. These are your 3 next steps. You're going to develop an enhanced SOP, so don't work on just device-centric SOPs. We want you to push your thinking, and don't forget about the P, the procedure in SOPs, so make it a solution, not just a rule sheet. We want you to plan to share your SOP with both your coach and your cohort, so your coach will be asking you about your SOP, and there'll be a built-in time during your first cohort meeting where you're going to have some time to share what you're doing and hopefully get ideas from your colleagues. Finally, you're going to complete the rollout survey that we're putting in Classroom and will get emailed to you. During the completion of that survey, you're going to have to share some evidence of what you are doing with your SOP, so be prepared to have a link to share and make sure you've shared it in Google Drive or however else you share it. I hope that this has helped you grow your expectations and your understanding of SOPs. And as always, if you have questions, please talk to your coach and they will be happy to work with you. Have a great day.